This is our 14th lecture in Intro to Mobile Development. We're going to talk a little bit about application development layers. So when we develop an application, a lot of times we want to jump in and just throw everything together all at once. But it's important to think a little bit about the layers that we'll have. First, we'll have presentation layers. The presentation layer may vary depending on which application development framework we're using. For Android, the presentation layer is typically XML based. So what we'll have is we'll have several layouts, and I will bring over Plant Places Mobile here, for instance. And if you take a look, if you take a look over, here's the live Plant Places Android. If you take a look over on the left, there are several XML based files, and these files define the layout. Each file defines the layout for an individual screen. So if we look at something like, let's say camera, what it will do, and this typically takes a few moments to render, but let's see, I don't want to, whoop, there we go. What it will do is it will draw a screen for us, and it will even allow us to drag and drop components onto the screen, which is quite nice. But in the background, what it's doing is it's generating XML. Now, what is XML? We probably talked about this a little bit before, but XML is a series of tags. So it'll start, as you can see up here, with a less than symbol, and then the name of the tag, and in this case, it's string is the name of the tag. And then many times an attribute followed by quotes, and then maybe a value. So that's what XML is. Well-formed, properly written HTML many times as also valid XML. So if you've had any experience with HTML, you probably have a fairly good idea of what XML is going to look like. Okay, so I'm going to scroll over, and it does take a few moments. It takes a bit of time to render the actual UI, so it might take a few moments to draw this screen. But what we'll have is we'll have some widgets like our checkboxes and our drop-down boxes and our text input fields and the like, and those we can drag and drop on the screen. Actually, you know what? I don't know if this screen's going to render because I have an advertisement on it. Let me run back, and it chokes a little bit on that. But let me run back. This is what the XML looks like. We have just an introductory tag, okay, that tells us about the character encoding for our XML and the XML version. And then we'll typically have a root element. The root element begins and ends the document. Sorry, I'm hourglassing. So we'll see that the very first tag that we have here is called linear layout, and then it has several attributes. Okay, so that's our very first tag. Notice you see less than symbol and then the word linear layout, and then you see a greater than symbol. You don't see a slash anywhere in here except in the attribute values, and those are for a different purpose. If you have an element like this, it means there's a matching close element somewhere else. And if we look at the bottom of the screen, sure enough, you'll see a matching close linear layout element. That's what we call the root element. Okay, so it's what begins and ends our document. And then everything in between is, in some manner, is a UI element that appears on our screen. So we'll have, for example, the advertisement. Okay, this is what's called an ad view, and what this will do is this will pull ads in and show them on the mobile device. Then an image view where we can display an image, and then a layout with a couple of buttons, and then the grid view that shows the different colors. The screen that we're looking at here is the screen that does the color match search. So this is the screen where at the very top you have an image, which is maybe a picture that you just took, and then you'll have some buttons that say take a new photo or open an existing image, and then you have a grid that shows the top 12 colors that were selected from the photo. So that's the screen that we're looking at here. Let me see if I can find probably new account, and again, this will take just a moment to render, but here is a different screen where you can sign up for a new plantplaces.com account. I'm going to try and switch over to Graphical Layout. Okay, here we go. So you see, this is the screen where you can sign up with a new account, okay? And you'll see on the left we have some widgets that we can drop onto this screen. As we drop those widgets onto the screen, it will change the XML over here. So for example, I could drag something like let's say another button. I could drag and maybe place towards the bottom. Okay. And I'm not sure if it's going to accept that or not just based on where I place the button. But what it will typically do is it will add the button to the screen, and then it will also add the button uh, in here in the XML as well. So the graphical layout that we see is just a graphical version of the screen that we're looking at. Let me see if I can maybe pop it in the same cell as this guy just so we can kind of see what happens. It doesn't look like it wants. Oh, there we go. So you see I was able to drag this button and drop it right onto the UI here. Okay. And then I can do things like I can change the name of the button. There are lots of options that I can do here. We have a bit of text up at the top. So a lot of the widgets that we've discussed so far, like autocomplete text and things like that, are over here on the left. So we see here's a normal plain text field. With password fields, we have our autocomplete text field. Multi-autocomplete looks pretty handy. We have composite widgets, so things like our grid view where we could show all the different colors that are found in an image. So these are the things, let's see, here's my button here. These are the things that the user will interact with. Okay, this, for some reason, I've made it upset. I'm going to close this without saving since I don't actually want that button to appear in real life. So, okay, there we go. Close. And so this is just the layout. Now we actually need something to happen when we click on that button. So what we will do is we will have, as well as our layout, we'll have a UI layer that knows how to respond to those buttons. So if I go to something like new account activity, this is actually a Java class that has the code that will operate when I click on that button. So it might just take a moment to load here. But this typically has user interface logic. So if we click down, we have our save new user, okay, and an on click listener. It means when the user clicks on this button, let's see, where's my on click listener? Probably, there we go. We go to save user. When the user clicks on this button, we're going to go in and we're going to save the user. So this class, this file that we're looking at here, does all the operations of pulling data out of each of those fields on the new account screen and then creating basically a user out of them. So this is what we'll call maybe a UI class, a user interface class, something that interacts with the layout. So on an Android view, we will have XML that shows the presentation, and then we'll also have some user interface logic that does the code that executes when you push on a button, or the code that executes to fill an autocomplete. Okay? It's a similar story for our friends over in Cordova. And one moment while I bring up Visual Studio. Whoop, there we go. It'll take just a moment to render this. It's a similar concept in Cordova. I mentioned that well-formed XML is also well-formed HTML. And so in Cordova, what we're doing is we're doing the entire presentation in HTML. And then the user interface logic is actually happening in JavaScript. So if I click over here, let me go to, let me scroll up just a second here. Okay. So if I go to, say, the camera screen, whoops, okay. It looks like I clicked on a goofy one there, but let's see. We'll give it a moment here. If I click on the camera screen, let me actually hang on just 1 second. I'll bring this up so we can take a look.